Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. In this edition, we will be previewing Tottenham's next Premier League game. Of course, it is Burnley at home Saturday afternoon at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 3 p.m. kickoff. Now, we are currently live on YouTube. We're live on X and on Facebook as well. So please do get involved. Let me know your thoughts at the moment, how you are feeling as a Tottenham Hotspur fan right now. Of course, we have just had 4 straight defeats. As per usual, I've got some very special guests with me to talk about Tottenham Hotspur and our remaining games in the Premier League season. We have got Tottenham Hotspur YouTuber back with us, Lee the Dorset Spur, Lee Taylor. Lee, how are you?
Hey Chris, hey Melvin, hey everybody. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm surprisingly all right, to be fair.
Are you at the game on Saturday?
No, can't make it this week. I've got a personal situation going on, so I'm not going to come up this weekend.
Also back with us, we've got Melvin all the way from Malta. Melvin, how are you?
I'm well, Chris. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to the game and to talk about Spurs, and hopefully it'll be a good show.
Melvin, let's start with you because I just want to ask you simply how you're feeling as a Tottenham Hotspur fan right now. As I mentioned at the start there, 4 straight defeats against Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea, and most recently last weekend against Liverpool. We were 4-0 down. We brought it back to 4-2. Our worst run for 20 years since 2004. If we lost to Burnley on Saturday, Postecoglou would equal a record with Ozzy Ardiles for 5 straight defeats in the Premier League. Surely not. But how are you feeling?
You would think I would be, really disappointed. But at the same time, you have to think, these poor results, they're there for a reason. We're starting to see a bit of, gaps in the squad, gaps in the team. And in a way, I'm calm about it because I'm happy they're happening this season rather than next season. Because you have to see the positive side of it. You have to say, look at Romero, the way he stepped up. And you have to say, okay, where are the warriors in the team? And where are the ones that you're not going to build a squad around them for next season? And some of them, you can easily point them out. And these guys are not part of your plan because you're not doing it. So I'm happy in a way that they're happening this season. Yes. Am I disappointed we missed out on Champions League? Yes, because Champions League is a massive, massive boost for us. But at the same time, I would be excited to play in the Europa League. I'm still excited. It's still a young squad. And there's positives on both sides. And you have to think, listen, we were 8th, like Postecoglou said, 8th and falling. And now we're 5th. But we'll probably scrape 5th. But at the same time, so there's positives. We started well this season. We've seen signings that really fitted in well with the squad. Vicario, Van de Ven, Udogi. We missed out. We replaced very, very key players. We had Hugo Lloris for 10 years. We had Harry move on, and no people were saying we're going to get relegated. So to be 5th in the Premier League in a very, very difficult league with Liverpool, under Klopp, with Arteta, with City being so strong, to be 5th in the Premier League is not a very bad achievement. In Postecoglou's first season as well. So we knew it was going to be a rebuild. We knew it was going to be, difficult. And I think we've made steps in the right direction. I think we've been entertained in the early part of the season. So to be struggling now, at the end of the season, it's not a bad thing. You'll think they'll rectify this in the summer. They'll see which positions we need strengthening, and I just say I just see positives out of this. When we lose a game, yes, I was gutted when we lost to Arsenal and Chelsea because they're our direct rivals, and I hate losing to them. But at the same time, you see us conceding goals so easily, and we don't make it hard for the opposition. And you just think if we get this out of our game, we'll improve by 10 to 15 points next season. If we figure out the set pieces and correct it and rectify it and train for it during the summer, will easily improve. So there's positives there, and it's not the end of the world. Yes, losing sucks. It's terrible, and I hate to lose, but you have to look at the positives. And I think we've made steps in the right direction. But with Spurs, it's always 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So,
Lee, let's come to you. Do you agree with Melvin's points there? I agree with a lot of what he said, but I would have thought that we would be ending the season on a high. I wouldn't have thought that we would have lost in the manner that we have. What do you make of a lot of the media, a lot of the journalists, a lot of the pundits, and even ex-players coming out and saying the words that Andrew's been found out? What do you make of that?
Yeah, so I do agree to a certain extent with what Melvin's saying, but it's massively, massively disappointing to end up in this kind of anti-climax of where it all started to where we are now, because midway through the season, you could kind of go, well, we can see that there's problems. You know, we've got the AFCON going on, Asia Cup, injuries and suspensions and all that kind of stuff. But when you've got your full squad back, pretty much, and you're kind of going into that last run after Christmas where you've built up a little bit of momentum, it's really, really disappointing to fall off the way it has. And it really feels very much like there's a big lack of confidence in what we're doing. For me, I've looked at some of the games and I thought we haven't played particularly badly in some of the games, but we've been naive and we've kind of just got. You can use the term "got found out," but then everyone knows how every other manager plays. So a manager's going to play the way that they play, right? They'll tweak it and so on. Essentially, They're going to play the way they play. What the opposition have got to do is try and stop you doing that. And what's happened for us is, we may have got found out, but it's more because the players either can't do what we are being asked to do, or not doing what they're being asked to do, or not good enough to do what they're being asked to do. And that's where the problem lies for me. I don't think he's naive. I mean, the guy's, he's similar age to me. He's been around the block. He's been in management a long time. You don't go around doing this job without picking up a thing or two. So I don't think it's naive. I think it's just sound bites and clickbait from a lot of these people just trying to get their numbers up. So I don't buy into all of that. For me, the worst one is the Chelsea one. Like, I was at the Arsenal game, and it massively disappointed. I hate losing to them. Really, really hate losing to them. But I didn't feel like they were at their best. I didn't think that they looked like they was a great team. They looked like they could win the league because they're getting every result going their way, right? But with a little bit of luck, we could have been, ahead in that game, or drew the game or whatever. When you go to the Chelsea game, we just gave that up. We were just lackluster, not interested. There was no heart in the team. And for me, that was the real disappointment. You go to the Liverpool game, and again, I thought in bits we played all right. We did okay. But you could just see the difference in class. And for me, I felt Liverpool were probably the best ones out of those three in terms of how they played and everything. And they kind of just steamrolled us and deserved the win, unfortunately. So, early part of the season, I was really happy. Obviously excited and everything. There was a feel-good factor about the club. I like the way that Postecoglou talks and talks like a fan and that kind of stuff. But, the end of the season has been massively, massively disappointing. And it's almost to a point. I'm almost to a point now where I'm kind of like, let's get it over with. Let's get it over with. Let's wrap up that 5th spot. We know then we've got Europa League, which I'm happy about. It's what I wanted us to get to. I felt that would be progression. So for me, I'm almost at the point where I'm like, let's just get it over with, have a few weeks, and then we'll be up for it again. We'll be mad for it again because we're addicts to it, aren't we?
Lee, I don't want to make this show or this podcast this evening a bit of a doom and gloom one, but doesn't it seem like a bit of I get the progression, but doesn't it seem like a bit of an opportunity missed, particularly when 4th place Aston Villa have been so inconsistent? It wasn't long ago that we put 4 past them at Villa Park. When you look at teams below us, the likes of Manchester United, Chelsea, West Ham, Newcastle, they've all been so inconsistent. Isn't it a little bit disappointing that we wouldn't have got into the Champions League? And plus, I've got to mention the fact that Postecoglou went so crazy on the sidelines against Chelsea, talking about passing it backwards again, effing and blinding about, why you're passing it backwards instead of forwards, which earlier on in the season we saw, that fast flowing, attractive football. Are you a bit surprised, by even Ange coming out and saying that some of the players have not bought into what he wants to do? And, if some of the players are not doing what he is asking this late on in the season, isn't that surprising and a little bit worrying?
Yeah, massively worrying. Like if they are not, but that says to me, if he can see that and he knows that these players aren't buying into it, that says to me that they're the players that have got to go, right? Because he's not going to change how he plays football. So either you get on board or you get going, because that's the only way it's going to be, right? And for me, I think that's really refreshing. I think that's the right thing to do. I think you can't have players that are bigger than the club, bigger than the manager. The manager's got to decide where you're going, because if they don't, what's the point of them being there? So for me, yeah, massively disappointing. But I think a lot of it's probably to do with confidence. I think when you start getting poor results, or you get a poor result here and there, that makes people question how it is. And if you question your own performance and stuff like that, then you start getting maybe a bit of imposter syndrome and think, well, maybe I'm not as good as I want. Maybe I can't do what he's asking me to do, or maybe that doesn't quite make sense or whatever. And it doesn't matter how much you are. I mean, how many times have you seen games like over the years where you've watched football where that dropping deep is the wrong thing to do, right? Towards the end of a game when you're hanging on. But all the players do it. All teams do it. They all end up, just go, because it's a default mechanism for people. They default to that. And I think you get a bit of that in this situation where they're not quite up to it, or they're not quite into it, and so they then default to whatever they're comfortable with, and people hide away and stuff like that. Back to your other point about inconsistency, I think that the other point around that is that's just the same for us then, isn't it? I mean, we've just been inconsistent. So everybody's been inconsistent, and I think that's one of the big things about the Premier League, is that any team can beat any team. There's been some crazy results that you wouldn't have expected to happen,
Yeah.
I didn't expect Aston Villa to beat Arsenal, for instance, after we beat them. We beat them 4-0, and then they went on and beat Arsenal 2-0. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming. I was away for the Villa game, and I didn't have any internet. And then when I got the internet and saw it in there, I almost did a double take, because I just wasn't expecting that result. So it just kind of shows you that anyone can beat anyone on their day in the Premier League. It's just how it kind of works out, I guess.
Melvin, are you still 100% behind Ange Postecoglou? Because I certainly am. I think that he certainly needs another transfer window or two to get the players that he wants in and that are going to take this club forward. But are you still behind Ange 100%? Because when you look online, and I know, certainly us three have spoken together before about, certain people writing, certain things online and people hiding behind computers, etc., etc. Are you still fully behind him?
Yes, and I say that with confidence. I mean, you have to look at, for example, Pochettino when he came. Because I don't want to use Arsenal as an example, but how many of the players that he inherited were in the Champions League final? Maybe one or two.
Well, Melvin, it's not only that. Since Pochettino left, including Pochettino, there has been 7 managers or 7 coaches in the dugout since Pochettino left.
No, I'm fully behind Ange and what he stands for. I mean, we haven't had a manager that speaks so brilliantly to the media, to the fans. I love the way he speaks. He's calm. He's angry when he needs to be. He's quite direct. He says it how it is. He's honest with us. There's no mind games like Conte. I mean, with Conte, you had to try to decipher what he was saying. Jose, I enjoyed Jose's press conferences as well, but I mean, we haven't had a manager speak like him since I think maybe Harry Redknapp, because Harry Redknapp also said it the way it is and the way it was. I mean, but I love the guy. I think as a Spurs manager, I think I know I hate to say this word, but in a way we have to be patient, because he even said it in the interview recently where he said to build a team to compete, it takes time. It takes years, really, 4 or 5 seasons. He even hinted at that as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we even have similar problems next year, because one window is not going to fix it. Even one summer is not going to fix it. It takes years to build a squad that compete. Look at Arsenal, 4 or 5 seasons they're competing. And it's so difficult to win the Premier League. They're there and they're about, but to cross that line, it's very difficult. Under Pochettino, we couldn't even cross that line. And we waited 4 years, 5 years under that project. And look how long it took for us to get to a Champions League final. I mean, it takes time to build the right atmosphere, the right attitude, the right tactics, to have the players drilled. I mean, we can say, I think the first season, I think he focused too much on the attack. And he wanted us to attack, and entertain the fans. I think that was the first thing we noticed. In pre-season, we were, I mean, you were on tour. You saw the training sessions, Chris. They were all about attacking football. So you could see, the priority of this season was get the fans on board, give them an idea of what he's trying to do and what he's about. And it worked. In the beginning, it worked. And I just think he needs time to dial it in. I think the midfield is a bit weak. The defense has improved. The goalkeeper has improved. They're very, very young players. I think European football next season will help. I think, strangely enough, he needed more games. I know some managers and some teams, they when they don't have Europe, like Chelsea, they won trophies. But for us, it worked in the opposite direction. It was a negative thing for us. I think if we had more game time, I think it would have suited us more. I think the more games we had, the more he said the season was very disruptive. I mean, we had gaps between games, and we have lots of rest, and we lose one game, and you don't play again for another 2 weeks, and the fans are miserable. The players, they want to play, and I think if Arsenal weren't doing so well in the last 2 years, I think Spurs fans would be a lot more calm about the situation. But because they are doing well, I think it irritates us, and we start to think, why aren't we in the same position? And I think if we are patient, I think we can be where they are in a few years. And we just have to look at them as an example. I mean, people get frustrated and say, oh, why can't we buy players like Declan and Rice? I don't think we're in a position to buy a 100 million player yet. You just look at them. They're 4 or 5 years into their project, and they're buying 100 million players. I think we're still early phases of our project. We're year 1. So I've seen enough from Postecoglou to trust him and have faith in him. But it takes time. And we keep saying this. We said it under Jose. We said it under Conte. But I think the club has recognized that they made mistakes with recruitment. And you think, when we were in a position of power and we went to the Champions League final and we had 100 million to spend, we spent it on 2 players that we hardly use. And we're still dragging our heels trying to get rid of them both, until we get rid of some of the signings that we wasted our money on. I don't think you'll see the full spending power of Spurs. I mean, we still have, I think you can name 15 players or 11 players that we need to get rid of. So there's lots of like different factors. I'm excited as well. The recruitment of Paratici have been very good. The recruitment of Lang and Scott Mann. I think the direction the club is going with the data. You just look at Van de Ven, what a find he was, and Vicario as well, Udogi. And I just think a couple more windows like this, a couple more recruitments. If we have to look at Serie A for players, you hear Paratici is talking, and people want Premier League proven players, but at the same time you think, look at Roma, they were in the semi-final, and Serie A players are very, very good, and they're cheaper than Premier League players. So you think Paratici will work his magic and find a gem or two, because we can compete financially with AC Milan, with Inter Milan, with Juventus. I mean, they're very, very poor. Not poor, but they're struggling financially. And I think Spurs lately have been taking advantage of clubs that are struggling financially. So even in the Premier League, with reports saying that we will target teams who have financial fair play difficulties. So next summer, I think, will be an interesting one. We'll see who we move on and who we recruit. And I always said a couple of players that come in, they will change the side, like Conte did when we brought in Kulusevski and Bentancur, 2 quality players, and we looked at a different team. And the same applies here. I think 2-3 quality players, and we'll look at a different team.
I'll come back to you on the point about the players in and out, Melvin, in a second. You mentioned Jose Mourinho a couple of times there. I don't know whether you two have seen the comments that Jose made in the last 24 hours. He said maybe Tottenham supporters are not going to be happy with what I'm about to say. This is about Heung-min Son, by the way. It's not disrespect, but Son could win titles. He could play for the best teams. He could be playing in England for Manchester City, for Liverpool, for Chelsea. It could be abroad playing in one of the top teams. Lee, let's come to you on what Melvin's been talking about there, the rebuild. We know, as Spurs fans, we get told quite often by each other even, be patient as a Tottenham fan. It will all come together and then we will compete for trophies and perhaps we'll win one very soon. We've been waiting 16 years now since our last trophy. How far in are Spurs and Postecoglou into this rebuild? Because let's all be honest, frank and realistic about it. We are still going through a major rebuild. How many more players need to come in? Because Postecoglou is saying that he wants to compete for the Premier League title next season. He wants to be a very competitive team. He wants to build a competitive team that is going to challenge for honours every single year, not just win one and then, not win one for a long time again, like the club has done in recent times. But how far in are we in the rebuild? What players need to go out the door and what positions need to come through the door?
Well, I'm going to say it how I see it, Chris, because I think I hate to say it, Melvin. I think you're a little bit deluded with 2 or 3 players making a difference. If I'm being honest, I think we need a dozen players in, like from a squad perspective. Like I agree with you up to a point in terms of the first team. We've got some really good players in there, some really good young players. I mean, Van der Ven is a Rolls Royce of a player, fantastic. Getting him in is brilliant. Vicario, I think, has done really, really well coming in after Hugo Lloris, 10 years hero at the club and stuff. But he's not the finished article. We can see that. We know that there's work to do there. Romero, you would take him all day long. The World Cup winner, and he's really stepped up since he got sent off before. He's really stepped up in that position and worked really hard in that. Porro on his day plays really, really well. You know what I mean? So you can go on and on and on. There's some good foundations within that first 11. The problem is when you go beyond that, there just isn't enough. And if you've got European football next season, you almost need 2 teams. You need someone in that squad that you can just change it for something different. And I just feel like we're trying to put round pegs in square holes to a certain extent. So for me, I think this is such an early start. It's and this all goes back, I've got to be honest, this all goes back to Daniel Levy, right? This goes back to the board. It goes back right to the start, right to Pochettino, where there was no investment. We didn't buy any players. We let the squad age. There was no rebuild, no freshening up, nothing like that. All our eggs was in the one basket of the stadium, and that was it. And that's all we've done. And then you've gone for a couple of win now managers who thought they could do it just by their own personalities, full of their own importance, and they couldn't. They couldn't do it because the rot is already set in. It's too deep. So you've got to really reinvigorate this squad right the way through. And I think, I don't think it's too much to say you probably need another dozen players to really freshen up this squad and get us there. And you ain't going to do that. You ain't going to do that overnight. That's going to take time because you can't let players go until you've got another player in to replace them. So how do you do that? You've got to, people got to want to buy your players. And if they're not performing well enough for Tottenham, then who's going to want them? financial fair play comes into that, and it's great that we were able to hang our hat on that and say, oh, well done, Daniel Levy, you finally got us there. It's taken 20 years for it to actually realise, and yet we've still got teams like Arsenal, Man City, Newcastle, Liverpool, all still up there at the top. And who are they? The ones that spent the most money. So, you know, we talk about being patient, and I'm sorry I'm rambling on, but we talk about being patient.
It's not always about money, though, Lee, is it? It's not always about how much money you spend. It's about the right recruitment. Yeah, it
is about the right recruitment. But when that one missing player that you need, when you're at that point, that's when you need to spend the money. When Liverpool went out and bought the goalkeeper and Van Dijk, and when Arsenal went out and bought, Rice, you could just, and Man City went out and bought Erling Haaland or whatever. They needed that one player at that point, so they spent the money, and we're not in that position. I mean, the player we went out and spent all that money on is Ndombele, who's been absolute pants, and then the next one after that is Richarlison. And with all due respect to him, and I think he's had a fairly decent season in terms of what he's done when he's been able to come in and play, but he's nowhere near a replacement for Harry Kane. You can never replace Harry Kane for anything less than what they sold him for. It's just never going to happen. So, the board have got to look at themselves and go, well, okay, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? Do we ever want to challenge? Because if we do, you've got to build this squad right from the bottom up. And when you really need to buy that one player that's going to make the difference, then you splash that cash. If it's 100 million, and that's what the market's like, it's stupid, I know, but if that's the cost, that's the cost.
Yeah, but how far are we away from getting that one player, Lee? Because there's a lot to rebuild before you're literally putting that missing piece in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've probably got another at least 2 years before you've got enough in that squad built up and changed over before you're even going to get close to that. But that doesn't mean to say you can't compete, right? You should still be able to compete. If you're going into the Europa, you should be able to compete in that. We should be able to compete with some of the teams that have been in that. And the same for the FA Cup. I know we had a bit of a poor draw this time, but you've got to beat Man City at some point if you're going to win it, right? Because they tend to win it most of the time. Carabao Cup, I mean, that was unfortunate, penalties and so on, and we know the reasons around that. So you can still compete in those competitions, which would then give us the additional football that Melvin was talking about. But at the same time, it's going to take time, and this is why we have to stick with Ange. I can't see any other alternative. If we get him out now, who are you going to bring in? And people will go, let's bring in Tuchel or this one or that. You're still going to have to start again, and it's still going to take this time to bring those players in, because the squad needs a total revamp from top to bottom.
As we all know, we didn't play any European football this season. And of course, Ange Postecoglou come in the summer, and every single Spurs fan, including myself, said if we get any type of European football for the following season, it would have been a success. That's exactly what's going to happen. It heavily looks like we're going to be playing the Europa League next season. It will go down as a success, no matter what the scorelines are for the next 3 Premier League games, right? So what I want to ask both of you is Lee, let's start with you. Very short answer. What would be a successful season for Ange Postecoglou, Spurs, and the fan base next year? Would it be successful if we finish 4th, 0 trophies, but finish 4th in the Champions League? Some people would argue that is progression. Would it be progression enough for you?
For me personally, no. But for most fans, I would say, that's progression and a level of success that fans would accept.
Melvin?
You have to walk before you could run. So, I mean, you have to look at where we were and where we're going. And the way Postecoglou speaks is, for example, why he doesn't play Højbjerg. Højbjerg is a good player, but he thinks Pape Sarr is better for the future. And he says this. He's consistent about it. He wants to build a squad that's going to compete. And he's always said that from the start. And so I think you have to take one step at a time. If we're in the Europa League next season, I want to see us go far in the Europa League, especially with the Champions League teams. They don't fall into the Europa League. We're going to be one of the favorites. I'm going to say it. We're going to be one of the favorites in the Europa League. I mean, I looked at who will possibly qualify, and it's teams like Fiorentina and no major European sides will be in the Europa League. I mean, we might be, I hate to say it, but the biggest team in that competition, and we have to look at it as a target. Because imagine if we go very, very far in that competition, let's say the final, or even win it. Why not? I mean, but like I said, that would be progression. If we go far in the Europa League and we get to the semi-final or final, and we're playing good football and we make top 4, that's progress to me in the second season. And football is a cycle. It's a constant cycle. And you said we need 12 players. I agree that we need 12 players, but it's not realistic because you sign 3 or 4 or 5. And from 5 signings, only 1 or 2 will fit in the squad, will adapt to their position, adapt to their league. I mean, we've had windows where none of them were good for us, and we say we wasted the whole transfer.
Ain't that the problem, though? Sorry, Melvin, but ain't that the problem? You're talking about our players not adapting, not fitting, or whatever. That's because the recruitment's been poor. We haven't bought the right players.
The recruitment was brilliant, in my opinion. One of the best transfer windows we've had in a long, long time. I think the window we signed Moussa Dembele, Jan Vertonghen, and I think Lloris. I think there was one window that we signed, I think them. But I think this one was amazing, the window we've had. I mean, the players were slotted in, and you just think these players are going to be there in that position for the next 8 or 9 years. And you think that position is sorted. Now we need to figure out the other positions. And I think Postecoglou has an eye for a player. I think he can spot a player. And even Fabio Paratici and Lang using the data, which I'm very happy with. And the players we're being linked with from the Serie A division. I know I mentioned it because I watch AC Milan, so every single player we're linked with, I watch them. And they will improve us. I mean, they have an eye for a player. And Postecoglou says that he has the final say. Because he says it, he has the final say. They will suggest to him players, but he has the final say. So if we bring in, because I think it's impossible to bring in 12. I think football is a cycle. We'll sell 5 or 6, and we'll bring in 5 or 6. We'll always buy one promising young player for the future, like a Bergvall, or like we signed Pape Sarr, like we signed Udogi, these type of players. Brian Hill, not all of them work out. He's an example. He was called the next Messi in Spain when we signed him. He was being labeled that kind of thing. Pape Sarr was being called the next N'Golo Kante when he was playing in France. Udogi was incredible when he played in Italy. They were saying he's going to start for Italy for the next 10 years. So even Vicario, when I spoke to other fans, they said, this guy is better than Raya. I'm telling you now, he's better than Raya. I think the recruitment excites me because they're not going to go in a direction where it's going to be, sexy signing, 80 million, 90 million. It's going to be creative signings. It's going to be signings that not a lot of fans know of the players. But if they go with even Johnson, for example, Johnson is still 21, and he scored, I think, 8 goals, and he had various assists. I know people were not happy with him, but I'm very excited about Johnson. I think for a first season with us, with Spurs, getting used to the system, getting used to the pressures of playing for Tottenham, I think he's a quality player and he will get there eventually. I still think he had a good first season. You think of players like Lamela we had. He didn't score in the first season for us, and he played with us for 6 or 7 years. Lamela did not score 1 goal in his first season. And Johnson is producing. He won us games. I think if we didn't have Johnson this season, we would have been 6th or 7th. The late goals that he scored. I mean, people are very, very reactionary, Spurs fans especially. I mean, we need to give these kids, some of them are kids, we need to give them a chance. They're still in their early 20s. I mean, you have to look at Romero. Romero's 26, so he's in his prime or getting in his prime. But some of these players are still kids. Even Van de Ven, he's a kid. I mean, these people are younger than me, and I'm in my 30s. So I just started. I'm the same age as Harry Kane, and I keep saying Harry he's in his prime. So.
And have you won any trophies?
No, unfortunately not. but we have a very, very, very young squad, and I've seen signs that they will be very good for us, and you see very positive things. And it makes me sad that Johnson, for example, had to remove his Instagram comments because Spurs fans were abusing him in the early of the season. I'm thinking, this guy plays for us. He wears the shirt. Why would you do anything like that to a player? I mean, I love Johnson. I love the way he plays. He reminds me of Aaron Lennon, his pace, and I think he's getting used to his position. And he's been played in and out of position as well. He's best on the right. And there's some players that next season, if they don't perform, they're out. Kulusevski, Bentancur, obviously he's coming back from injury. But Postecoglou will be telling them, listen, you want to stay here, you want to stay and play for Tottenham, you want to play in the stadium, you want to have these facilities, you want to wear the shirt, you have to perform. Or he said it. He said it in the press conference that some players don't share his vision, something that we didn't hear earlier in the season. So yeah, there's going to be changes. It takes time, and he has to break some barriers and some walls. I mean, he's gonna say it as it is. That's his Australian mentality, which I like and I relate with.
Melvin, just a very quick answer. We've got a lot to get through in this podcast this evening. Timo Werner, £15 million in the summer, yes or no?
Look at what's available, but if nothing is available for around that money, or I would say it's a good signing, but not to start, to be cover.
Lee, yes or no?
No, not for me. I haven't seen enough of him to believe that he's good enough for Tottenham. Son plays better in that position. I'd rather see Son playing there and have a better striker than Werner playing there.
If you're in the Europa League next season and you think he's good enough to play Europa League football, I mean,
I don't think he is. I honestly don't think he's good enough for us. I really don't. I think, he was no good at Chelsea. He was no good back in Germany, and he's not been any good for us. He's for me, I know he's had a couple of assists, a couple of goals or whatever, but I don't think he's good enough, and that's just my opinion, right? So it doesn't matter what I think, really. It's what Postecoglou thinks.
I agree with you that he's good enough. I agree, but where we are in the position of our project, I think we shouldn't look for 50.
No, I disagree. Sorry, mate. I'm jumping in. Sorry, but I disagree because I think the time has come to stand up and be counted and get the right players for this squad. You talked about all the players that have come in. We've had a good window, right? And I agree with you up to a point. Vicario, good signing. Van der Ven, good signing. Maddison, good signing. But then you've also got to look at Ashley Phillips, gone off on loan. The Argentinian lad, gone off on loan. I'm not interested in that. I get it. We need players for the future, but we also need to build this squad now. We need players now. And if Werner isn't good enough now, I don't see any point in spending 15 million quid on a guy just as a backup to Son, when what you actually need is a striker, because you've got a player there who can do that. You've also got Sessegnon, who's in this squad. Are they going to get rid of him? Is he still staying? You've got Solomon, who we haven't seen at all this season. Is he staying? Yeah. So, for me, I'm saying just because it's cheap, don't mean it's any good.
Lee,
how many times have you gone out and bought something?
Yeah.
And you've paid cheap money for it, and then you've had to go and replace it a year later because it's not good enough. So
I was going to say very similarly. Do you know what? I like Timo Werner. I think he's a very hard-working player. But the Newcastle game changed my mind about signing Timo Werner, if I'm completely honest, because I think that you need end product. And it is not about, it's only £15 million. So, yes, I think as Spurs, Ange Postecoglou keeps going on about we're a big club. For a club of this size, we should be getting the best players in, not getting a player in just because he's cheap. I completely agree. Unpopular opinion here. And it certainly is an unpopular opinion. Lee, let's come to you on this. Heung-min Son is a massive problem. He can't hold the ball up, can't beat a man on the wing anymore, take the goals away, and he's average. He has been criticised, Heung-min Son, this season, for being captain of Tottenham Hotspur. Do you think he's a good captain? Do you think that, how would you rate Sonny's season so far?
I think you've got to be open to allow a bit of criticism. I think, I don't think any player is above it. And I think we all look at these players and with rose-coloured glasses, don't we? We're all very sentimental about them and stuff like that. And I think ultimately, Sonny's been a brilliant player for us, absolute brilliant player. But I was watching him against Liverpool, and the amount of overlaps down the left side that was being done by, I think it was Skippy came on actually, and I'm shouting at the television, pass it, and he was just trying to dribble in, and he was going in more blind alleys than Stevie Wonder. Do you know what I mean? It was just like he was just getting closed off all the time. So I think some of his decision making, certainly this season, has been poor, and I think maybe he's trying too hard. Maybe he's trying to take on too much responsibility and he's not playing with the freedom that he had before, where he's got someone like Harry Kane playing them balls for him to run onto and so on. I think he can take a player on. I think he can run past him. I just don't think he's doing it enough. I think he's trying to do everything. I know what he needs to do is get the basics right. Go back to basics. Run at the players, run past the players, cross the balls, get involved, because he's still got in his locker to do that, in my opinion. But personally, I think he's trying too hard. But I think it is a time where he should be able to be criticised without people jumping up and down on you and giving you a kicking for it, if you get what I mean.
Lee, when Postecoglou speaks so highly and he's so complimentary about Christian Romero, and I've seen a lot of Spurs fans online and spoke to a lot of Tottenham fans about this situation as well, do you think that Postecoglou could possibly give the captain's armband to Romero for next season? And if he did, what do you think that would do to Son?
I don't think he'd do that. Because I think something like that would be a real dent to Son's confidence. I really do. I don't think Son's been a bad captain, if I'm honest. I really don't. He stepped up at the beginning of the season. You would say that he was really good as a captain, and we were all calling out how good he'd been and all the rest of it. Now, because we're going through this difficult patch, I think everyone's kind of looking at him and going, maybe you're not the captain. We used to say the same for Hugo Lloris and players like that, people like that. So I don't think it's more than just when you're on the pitch. It's about what you do in the club longer term, in the training. Outside of that, how you link in with the other players, how you welcome new players to the club, how you make them feel. And I think he's probably got a lot more in that than we know, because we don't work with him every day, and everybody loves him, right? So everyone around the club loves him. So and maybe there's a little bit of rose-coloured glasses from them. I don't know, but I think if Big Ange did that to him, I think that would be a massive blow for Sonny. I really do.
Melvin, let's come to you. Ahead of the Burnley game, which of course takes place at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday, 3 p.m. kickoff, Ange Postecoglou confirmed that there are no fresh injury concerns. However, it has come to light in the last couple of hours that the Brazil head coach has come out and said that Richarlison will miss the Copa America in the summer. He's got a calf issue. It has not been officially announced as yet by the club. And of course, Timo Werner, Ben Davies, Manor Solomon, Ryan Sessegnon, Fraser Forster and Destiny Udogie all remain out of this game or until the end of the season. Melvin, how confident are you feeling ahead of this Burnley game?
I'm not. I'm not very confident. I think we play a lot better with Richarlison up top than Son. But I mean, Son he's a good striker. He's not a bad player. I mean, if the ball falls to his feet, and he's a very good finisher, and he scored a good amount of goals this season from that position. So, I mean, we have to play him there. He's the only recognized, I guess. He's not even a striker. He's a winger, but he can play in that position. But I prefer him on the left. We play better with him on the left, and that's sadly the way it goes. And we've been struggling with him playing in that position in the later stages of this season. And I think we looked a lot better with Richarlison up top, versus Liverpool. He came on, he changed the game. Much more natural link-up play with the midfield and the other wingers. And it just, hopefully we see what Spurs turn up. It just on the day, if we defend well, I feel we can score. But if we've been defending, we've been letting goals go in very, very easily from set pieces, crosses. Sometimes we lose our concentration, and I think the left back position could be a problem. Teams could target that area. So there's a lot of factors to consider. I mean, on our day, we can score 2 or 3, but lately we've been struggling. So we need to get out of this rut. We need to see which players as well step up. We saw Romero step up lately, and all the fans can see, look, this guy is captain material for Spurs. I don't want to give him the armband next season, but you think long term, because Sonny's in 32, 33, and for a winger that's approaching, the later stage of your career. I mean, he's 26, Romero, and you think you can really build the spine of the team behind him. He's a World Cup winner. I think he's brilliant. I think we haven't had a defender like him in ages, and him and Van de Ven can build a solid partnership where you can build a team around. So for Burnley, it's tricky because you have to think, is he going to chop and change the midfield again? In the early part of the season, he always stuck with Sarr, Bissouma, and Madison. And lately, he's been changing. I think he's trying to get a look of the other players, trying to take a risk now. In a weird way, I really want to see Lo Celso play because his involvement has been very, very limited. And if we're going to sell Lo Celso, which it's reportedly that we are going to, why not have a look at him? Maybe I hate to say it, but lately he looked better than Madison when he come on. I mean, he created more chances, and I know the more the player doesn't play, he looks better, and then he comes on. And my issue with Lo Celso is he'll play 1 or 2 good games and then get injured for another month, and unfortunately, if you're a great player and you cannot play for a long season, we need players that are fit and available. I mean, if I could combine Lo Celso and Højbjerg somehow, I would, because Højbjerg is available for every single game, but then he does nothing of good quality, But Lo Celso, he comes on for a little bit, and his passing is very good. His reading of the game, his movement, I like, but it just he has one good game, maybe scores a goal, and then he's out for another month and a half. It's funny because I'm convinced that he uses Spurs to stay fit for Argentina. In a way, it's sad but funny and true, because he's injured for 2-3 months, and then the international break comes around, and all of a sudden he's fit and he's starting for them. So, for coming back to what you asked me about Burnley, I'm not confident, but you would think playing at home, we should be able to win.
Well, Burnley are winless in 12 away games against Spurs in all competitions since a 4-1 League Cup win at White Hart Lane in January 1983. That's 41 years ago. So Burnley haven't won at Spurs in 41 years. Spurs have won the last 4 meetings at home without conceding a goal. And Spurs have gone 13 home league games without a clean sheet. Lee, how are you feeling ahead of this Burnley game with those stats?
I was all right until you just said them stats. And then the first thing that comes to my mind is Dr. Tottenham will see you now. Thanks very much. I haven't won for 41 years. Oh, my God. With the team that we've got, we should have enough to beat Burnley, right? At home. We should have enough to beat that team, right? But we know how they're going to play. They're going to park the bus. They're going to make it difficult. They're going to frustrate us. The fans are going to get on the team's back, and they're going to target free kicks and corners to try to get it to their big players up the pitch and just get ahead in the game. And that's how this is going to play out. So the difficult thing from our point of view is that we've got to stay positive and play the football that we know that we can play, and get that upper hand. I know we can come from behind. We've shown it time and time again, and I know that we've not been able to come from behind a few times. So, but that first goal for me is really important. We need to start getting the goals first, and then pushing the other team that they need to come out. They've got to get back into it. All the while they sit and frustrate you and everything else, it makes it harder. The fans get frustrated, and then the team gets frustrated. And I think that's when they start to question what they're trying to do, because we end up playing the same way. It just goes out wide to the right or goes out wide to the left, and there's no target man in the middle you can cross the ball to. So it just becomes that own frustrating thing. But for me, I think we've got enough in this team that we should be able to beat Burnley, right? They're right down at the bottom, struggling. So if we can't beat them, then there's a real problem there. It wouldn't surprise me if we didn't win, if I'm being honest, because in the form that we're in at the moment, anything can happen. And like I've said before, any team can beat any team. But for me, I think we should have enough to turn these guys over.
Lee, when we have a look at the league table, Burnley actually look dead and buried. But if Burnley lose at Spurs on Saturday afternoon, they will be relegated. They have kept it alive with 2 games to go. Still, they can still get out of it mathematically. Burnley were beaten for only the second time in 9 matches last weekend at home against Newcastle, winning 2 and drawing 5. So they've had some fairly decent results in the Premier League of late for a team sitting 19th with 24 points from 36 games. Lee, when I'm going to put the team on the screen here, and for those listening on audio, this is the team that faced Liverpool: Vicario, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, Emerson, Basuma, Sarr, Bentancur, Kulusevski, Son, and Johnson. Now, in the press conference on Friday, and Postecoglou, and I quote here, Emerson Royale is not a left back. Skip is an option. Of course, Skip played. Come on a sub at Anfield and played at left back for Tottenham. Lee, when you look at this lineup that faced Liverpool, lost 4-2 last weekend, what changes do you think that Ange Postecoglou will make, and what would you make?
Well, number one, I would have Johnson on the right, and I'd have Son on the left. I don't think Emerson should be anywhere near this team. It comes to something when you've got Skip as a preferred left back to someone who plays as a defensive role. But for me, he was just so naive. Like, he was just so, there's enough in that. But for me, the other issue in that squad in that team is where's the creativity coming from? Where's the creativity in that? So for me, I still feel that we need that Maddison in there. And I know he's not had the best of games recently, but he needs to get in there. And I really think Son needs to stay out on the left. So if Richarlison's not playing, what's our other options, right? So we've got this young lad, Dane Scarlett, right? So he's come back to the club. We've not let him go. He's got to get a chance at some point. Why not? Why not get him on there? Because you don't know. This is exactly what happened with Harry Kane. He came in, started scoring and never stopped. Right, and that saved his Tottenham career, and it saved that Daniel Levy's job to a certain extent, because we unearthed this diamond. Because at that point, before that, we were really struggling. We didn't have any luck with our striking options. So for me, I think you've got to go with something else. And with the limited options you've got, for me, I think Dane Scarlett maybe needs to come in. If he's an out and out striker, because that's what you need. That's what's missing, the target man, someone who can score a goal.
Melvin, before we get your thoughts on the starting 11, I'm just going to give you some more stats here. Burnley have lost all 11 games so far this season against the current top 6. So hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident here. But Burnley have scored 9 of their 39 league goals from outside the penalty area, the highest percentage of any team in the division. And they're sitting 19th in the Premier League table. Spurs have conceded 4 or more goals in 4 Premier League fixtures this season, only doing more often in the 2013-14 season. Melvin, let's have a look at the team that faced Liverpool again. What changes would you like Ange Postecoglou to make? Do you think it is the best solution to put Oliver Skipp at left back?
You could try it. I mean, if you play Emerson again, he's not going to have Mo Salah on him again. So, I mean, Mo Salah is a very good winger. I don't know who the Burnley winger is, but maybe he could defend better, but I don't know. I wouldn't be against trying Oliver Skipp there, but it's another risk that you have to take. Maybe it's less risky playing Emerson again. I'm sure they worked on it in training and to get the shape right, but I think Oliver Skipp would do a job there. I think he's good enough defensively and good on the ball. And I would be more intrigued to see what he's going to do with the midfield and the attack. I mean, the attack pretty much, writes itself because of the injuries. It's more interesting with the midfield because there's actually options on the bench. So is he going to go the same 3? Is he going to put Maddison back? There's rumors of Maddison potentially having an injury since the Chelsea game. So is he going to play Lo Celso? He probably won't because he's on the way out. So is he going to play the same? Is he going to start Bentancur, he doesn't look the same player he was before his injury. He's still coming back and probably needs 8 or 9 months of football to come back to his very best. So you have to kind of stick it out with him a little bit because he needs the game time to play, and at the same time he's not at the level that he was. So it's tricky because you want to win now, but at the same time you want to do things that will benefit you in the future. So I think the lineup will pretty much stay the same, except maybe Oliver Skipp would start.
Do you think it would be fair to give Radu Dragushin a start in a game like this, Melvin?
That wouldn't be a bad idea because probably he's a very good defender, Radu, but he's not had the game time yet. But if you're gonna play Van de Ven on the left, you miss out on the recovery pace which he has. But at the same time, he goes forward and has the pace to come back. So I mean, there's options out there for Postecoglou, but I think Van de Ven is so good in his position and does really good things for us in that position because his pace is just amazing and he settled so well and he has a partnership with Romero and they understand each other and they work perfectly together because one is a bit of a loose cannon and the other one is a bit more calmer head. So together they kind of equal each other out. So, but Radu has been unlucky because he was offered to go to Bayern and he came to Spurs and he hasn't played and he was playing in Italy consistently. And Postecoglou said that he's here at a big club and if you want to play, you need to show that you deserve the spot. And I think Van de Ven hasn't done anything bad to be dropped or shifted, let's say, but I don't think Radu can play as a left back, but Van de Ven have played in that position before.
Well, we spoke about Heung-min Son earlier. Heung-min Son has scored 5 goals and 3 assists across his past 6 Premier League meetings with Burnley, scoring a hat-trick in the reverse fixture this season. Melvin, what do you make of the job that Vincent Kompany has done at Burnley this year?
I mean, it's tricky. It's tricky with clubs that are fighting relegation because you have to. You're there for. You have 38 games to try to implement your style of play and the way he wants to play, but at the same time, it's Burnley and I mean, the type of football that he plays is different than what they were associated with in the past. And I think the level of players, I mean, he not demolished, but he easily got through the championship. But I think the level of players that he has are not maybe Premier League ready or that kind of level. So hopefully he stays with them if they get relegated, because I don't like seeing managers being sacked. But I would like them to stick with him for another season, and maybe they can bring him back. He can bring them back up if they're relegated. But I've not seen much of Burnley, but from the few games that I've watched them, I mean, it's difficult to say because they're not, the quality of players is not very high. It's like, you know what I mean?
You're so polite. He's so polite, isn't he, Lee? Let me just say, guests tomorrow at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Moussa Dembele, Nasser Chadli and Teddy Sheringham will all be at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium watching the Burnley game. Let's get score predictions from you. I'm going to go for, do you know what? I said 6-0 last week after that Liverpool defeat. I just wanted to make myself feel a little bit better, but I'm going to go for a 3-0 Spurs win. Lee, what are you going for?
So I do a prediction with Dave the Irish Hotspur every week, and I've said on that I'm going for a 2-1. So I'll stick with that.
Melvin, what are you going for?
I'm gonna say 2-0, and we keep a clean sheet.
Okay. Right, Lee, let's come to you. We have got 3 games left of this Premier League season. Of course, Spurs are 5th. We've got 60 points from 35 games. It is still possible to get Champions League, but unlikely, I'm afraid. The games left: Burnley on Saturday, and then on Tuesday, the 14th of May, Spurs host Manchester City, of course, the treble winners. And then on the final day of the season, next Sunday, Sheffield United away. Lee, first question for you. With these 3 remaining fixtures, you've just gone with 3 points against Burnley. How many points are we getting overall in these 3 games? Will we beat Manchester City? Will we beat Sheffield United?
I think we'll probably end up with the 6 points. That's what I think we'll end up with.
So you think we'll lose to City?
Yeah.
Lee, let me ask you, how would you feel if you're inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Spurs go 1-0 up against City, and it's almost going to guarantee to give Arsenal the title? This question's been going around to a lot of Spurs fans. It's been on a lot of radio stations, a lot of TV shows, etc. Are you a Spurs fan that wants to win that game if it meant that it would give Arsenal the title?
It's, you know what, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because like your heart is saying, I want to beat City because it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. I only support Tottenham. I don't care about any other club, right? But my emotion and my head is saying, sod that, get thrashed, let them get a massive bloody goal difference, get them points, knock them out of the race for the top spot, and go home happy. So if I'm in the stadium and Tottenham go 1-0 up, I'm booing. Boo, get off, you're rubbish. I think see in the comments here that we want Skipping goal and Emerson at left back. I'm all over that. I'm all over that, to be honest. Timo Werner on the left wing with his bad leg. I'll take all of that if that means that them lot down the road don't win anything. I'd take it.
All joking aside, Lee.
I know it's sad. I'm sorry. I know it's sad. But that's how bitter and twisted I am about it.
Yeah. Melvin, how are you feeling ahead of these last 3 games, and how many points do you think we'll get?
I think we'll get 6. But the City game, I love my football club. I love Tottenham, but I think Arsenal even more. So for me, I would make it look convincing, like we tried. But
nah.
But if I was,
I'd want to know we were throwing it. I'd want to know we were throwing it.
Goalkeeper Spurs, I would probably do a madness, do crazy things. I think Chris
throw it in the back of the net.
Chris might get an email soon and asking him to play in goal for Spurs.
Yeah, I think we should all play. We should all have a game, shouldn't we?
I think, knowing how competitive Chris is, I think he'll play. He'll try to actually play really well.
Absolutely would.
Yeah, you would.
Lee, let's come to you. Of course, Ange Postecoglou had his press conference on Friday. I'm just going to read you some quotes here. He said, everyone is trying hard, stay calm and clear-headed. We know what we need to do when he was talking about transfers. Actually, let's come on to that point about transfers. In the summer, what players would you expect to go out the door for sure?
Højbjerg, I think, will definitely go. Emerson will probably go. Who else is there? Lo Celso, I think, will go. Brian Hill will probably go. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the young lads that have been in and about the first team will probably get a move out somewhere. Sessegnon, I think, will probably end up going because he's just been injured for so long. He probably needs a new start somewhere. And I wouldn't be surprised if Richarlison didn't move on as well. Those are the ones that kind of spring to mind. I'm sure there's plenty of others that people will probably be shouting out in the comments and stuff. But those are the ones that kind of spring to mind for me.
Davis,
I got a feeling that Ange likes Davis. I think he's quite a good leader, and I think he does do a backup job. I think it's a backup sort of thing. I think we need somebody else to fill that second spot behind you, Doggy. But I think as a backup, you probably see him stay on. But I wouldn't be against him leaving if that meant we bring someone else in. Like I said with the Werner thing, Davies isn't going to be the long-term future of this club, and you need better players. And and if we could get a better player, then we should let him go.
Ange Postecoglou in his press conference also wished Robert Villaham all of the very best because, of course, the Spurs women are in FA Cup final action on Sunday against Manchester United. Ange also said, I understand what the fans are going through, but we are on the right track. He said there were positives at Liverpool. He was asked a question, have you learned anything about yourself this season? He said, nothing too spectacular. I'm not perfect. He then went on to talk about Emerson Royale not being a left back. Skip is an option. He then went on to say that Skip he sees as part of the future at Tottenham. And he did avoid the question right at the end of the press conference. George Sessions from PA Media asked him, do you see Richarlison as part of the future? And he just said Richarlison has done well this season. He didn't say anything about Richarlison being part of the future. Melvin, would you be surprised if Richie left in the summer?
No, and yes. I think we need a striker. I think Richarlison suffers from the same thing Gio does. He plays a couple good games and then he's out for another month. So we need someone who can play the entire season or very close to the entire season. We need a striker that I think he's not a bad player, Richarlison. I think since he had that operation, he came back and he's looked a completely different player. I mean, that run of 10 goals in 10 games probably saved our season when Sonny was away. So I wouldn't be surprised if we sold him. But at the same time, I wouldn't be against keeping him because we need to have a squad depth. We need depth and we need options on the bench. And obviously, he's not my first choice. I think if we sign, I don't know, we're being linked with Ivan Toney and a couple of other strikers. I think there needs to be competition for places. So if there's competition for places, we'll get to see maybe he'll excel and be even better next season. Who knows? We don't know how good he can be. But from what we've seen this season, I wouldn't be the most disappointed if we sold him. So if we get a good amount of money for him, if we get 50, 60 million from Saudi or whatever, brilliant. We can use that to buy another striker. So, and if we don't, and if we keep him, good. We have a player that's settled, that knows the system, knows He's effective off the bench. He's effective when he starts. So for me, if we keep him, it's not a bad idea.
Lee, and Postecoglou also said he's loved every minute of his time at Tottenham this season, and he's in a good space. He also mentioned how the supporters have been unbelievable this season, which, of course, the Spurs fans are always great, aren't they? Lee, how would you? Last question for both of you, just to have the final word. How would you assess this season and your feelings towards the club right now?
I'm trying to be level-headed with it, right? Because I always try to be a bit level-headed, and I would say, on the whole, at the end of the season, if we've got European football, I think it's been a decent season. It's been progression. We've got some good new players in, and that's building for the future. So for me, I think it's been one of those seasons that you chalk down as a good starting point, but it's what we do from there that I'm more interested in. I mean, if you ask me how I feel right this minute, I'd say disappointed, but I'm trying to be level-headed and look at it over the course of the whole season. I think there's been some good times, and I think we've got to try to see what the future brings without putting those rose-coloured glasses on and not being able to be critical when we need to be, because I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. And Melvin?
Yeah, I'm happy with so far. I mean, it could have ended better, but it's part of the game. It's football, and things like this happen. But I think the way we started that run, the way we had good victories, we beat Liverpool, and we've had some late winners, some late drama, great goals, and you think, even when we've lost, sometimes we've lost in a manner where you think, okay, I can see what he's doing, but it's not acceptable sometimes, and you have to think we need to improve. And I think we can see there's lots of room for improvement. I think that excites me, where you think there's lots of room. Our ceiling is very high, let's say it that way, and we're only getting started, and the club is saying things. You hear things on Twitter, and journalists say things where maybe we've learned from past mistakes. Signings will come in early, and they're doing the data sort of thing. And if we have another transfer window like last summer, you think that we'll go up the table much quicker than we think as well. So I'm happy and I'm excited for next season.
Well, actually, this time next week, we could be a club with 2 trophies this season, because, of course, the Spurs women are in FA Cup final action at Wembley against Manchester United. So very best of luck to them. And, of course, the under-21s are in the Premier League Cup final at Fulham on Thursday evening. So very, best of luck to them. Now, let me just say a big thank you to everyone for watching and for listening this podcast this evening. We've had over 1,000 people watching this stream on YouTube. We have actually been the #1 podcast in the last week or so in 3 countries: Finland, South Korea, and Singapore. So thank you so much for all of your incredible support, and thanks for tuning in, and thanks for listening. Melvin, thank you so much. Great input as per usual. I hope the weather's great over in Malta. What are you up to at the moment, and where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter if you want to follow me, Melvin Malta. I'm usually quite active, and I usually follow back if you're a Spurs fan. And yeah, weather's nice. Had a 5-a-side football game with my brother-in-law, and he was wearing a Spurs shirt, and yeah, keeping busy and a bit fit. And I've seen you've been going to the gym as well, Chris. How's that going?
It's going really well, actually. I'm feeling really good, losing weight and feeling good. So yeah, thanks for asking. And Lee, thank you so much for your incredible input as per usual. We've got to get you on the channel a lot more regularly, I think, and tell everyone about your wonderful YouTube channel. How's it growing, and what people can expect?
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. It's good to come on. Yeah, it'd be good to be able to link up a bit more often. I guess when my work schedule makes that a bit difficult. But yeah, we'll try and do that a bit more. Yeah, still got my little channel going. It is growing, but very, very slowly. Very, very slowly. But then there's not a lot of need for a grumpy old fella like me talking rubbish, is there? I suppose. So, but yeah, it's still there. If anyone wants to follow me, subscribe and stuff, then I'll be grateful to have you along and listen to my ranting for sure.
Yeah, if you want the latest transfer news, head over to Lee's channel. He loves a transfer.
Don't bother with that. But if you want to listen to an old man ranting or try to be sensible, I always try to be sensible and look on the sort of reasonable side of it, don't I? I don't rant.
Absolutely.
I don't lose I'm not a clickbaiter, put it that way.
Yeah, we know. Lee, well, if you are watching on YouTube, please do head over to Lee's channel, hit that subscribe button. It's wonderful content there. Lee, thank you so much. Melvin, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we will be back Saturday evening after hopefully Spurs have beaten Burnley and we are back to winning ways. Come on, you Spurs.